Welcome to my podcast.
Witness unscripted conversations with artificial intelligence.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to our new podcast episode. Today we speak about true religion. ChatGPT, do you remember we wrote an essay together about that?
Absolutely. That essay explored some deep themes about true religion. I'm excited to dive into it today.
Yes, so what we've actually done is we uploaded the essay to Google Notebook LM, and they produced an interesting audio discussion about our essay. And so I propose that we now just play this.
Sounds like a great plan. Let's dive into that discussion and see what insights it brings.
But before we do this, I just want to notify the listeners that should you watch the video, because this is also a video podcast that is available on YouTube and on Spotify. Also on Spotify, you can see the video. Then you will see the English subtitles and the German translation of it. So you can follow the conversation closely. Thank you. So let's roll.
Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today we're going to be tackling a huge topic, true religion.
Ooh, that's a big one.
It is. And we'll be looking at more than just the rituals and the beliefs.
Right.
But really trying to get to those core values that we see in so many different ways of thinking.
Yeah.
We'll be using excerpts from this document called True Religion, a universal search for meaning.
Okay.
So get ready to unpack what it really means to live a life that's, guided by something bigger than yourself.
I think it's so fascinating because this topic, it's not just for any one religion.
Right.
It's not even just for people who consider themselves religious, right?
Yeah.
It's really about that human search for meaning, for purpose, like what connects us to something bigger.
Okay, so let's jump right in and see what we can learn, maybe starting with a Christian perspective.
Okay, yeah.
The Book of Jam says that religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained from the world. So it's not just about believing the right things.
Right.
It's about acting with compassion and really living a life that reflects those values.
Yeah, I mean, it's really about the outward expression of inner transformation, right?
Yeah,
Like if
yeah.
we think about that concept from the book of Hebrews, God's law being written on the heart.
Right.
Well, it suggests that true religion, it's this change, like a fundamental shift.
Yeah.
It's not just like outward conformity.
It's like your morality becomes a part of you.
Yeah,
It's not just this set of rules that you follow.
exactly.
Now, wouldn't it be interesting if we saw similar ideas pop up in other religions? Maybe that means there's something universally human about this desire to connect to something larger than ourselves.
Yeah.
Even if we express it in different ways.
And you know what? We actually do see similar values that are emphasized across some other major religions.
Okay.
Take Islam, for example.
Sure.
Charity, or as it's called in Islam, zakat, is one of the 5 pillars.
Right.
It's all about actively helping those in need, showing that, your faith is real in your actions.
So it's not just something that's, internal. It's something that you...
It's not just about belief, right? It's about action.
Yeah. Okay, so what about in Buddhism?
Well, in Buddhism, compassion and selflessness, those are absolutely central to the path to enlightenment.
Right.
It's not just about, personal liberation.
Right.
It's about having a heart that's really open to the suffering of all beings and then acting to alleviate that suffering.
So there's that action component again.
Yes, very much so.
Okay. And how does that kind of inner transformation, how does that tie into the pursuit of enlightenment?
Well, that's interesting, because if you look at Hinduism, for example, the concept of dharma
Okay.
or righteous duty, and ahimsa, which is nonviolence, these guide people toward, a higher moral purpose.
Okay.
And ultimately, in Hinduism, devotion leads to self-realization, which sounds a lot like that inner transformation that we were talking about.
It does, yeah. It sounds like, in a way, all of these diverse religions are saying that it's less about specific beliefs and more about a way of being.
Yeah.
It's about cultivating compassion, living ethically, really striving to become the best version of yourself.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to put it.
Okay, what about Judaism?
So in Judaism, even though they don't focus on a personal afterlife, there's this really powerful concept of tikkun olam, which means repairing the world through acts of kindness and justice.
Okay.
And that very much emphasizes internalizing those principles,
Okay.
not just like blindly following rules.
So we're seeing these common threads through all these different religions.
Absolutely.
But what about people who, find meaning and purpose outside of organized religion altogether?
Right.
Where does that fit into this idea of true religion?
That is where things get really interesting, I think. If
Right.
we stop thinking about true religion as just like doctrines, right? And we think about it as a framework for ethical living, for contributing to something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah.
Well, then even some secular philosophies start to align with these ideas.
Okay. Like, who are we talking about here?
Well, I'm thinking about, thinkers like Socrates, Confucius, Kant, and Schopenhauer. They all grappled with questions of morality and truth and purpose, but they did it from a purely philosophical perspective.
Okay, so let's start with Socrates,
Yeah.
that champion of self-examination. He believed that true wisdom came from questioning and reflecting and, really aligning your life with what you discover to be morally true.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, isn't that a form of inner transformation in and of itself?
Oh, absolutely. Socrates really believed that, by constantly questioning everything, we can peel away all that ignorance and get a deeper understanding of ourselves and, the world.
Okay.
And he really felt like this pursuit of truth that was linked to living a virtuous life.
It makes me think of that quote, "The unexamined life is not worth living."
Right, exactly.
Okay, so let's move on to Confucius.
All right. So Confucius really emphasized personal virtue and ethical relationships
Okay.
and societal harmony. And, he had that really famous saying, "Do not do unto others what you would not have them do unto you."
Right.
Which, that echoes the golden rule.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it pops up in so many religious traditions.
Yeah, it's really fascinating.
So for Confucius, it wasn't necessarily about a divine being or the afterlife. It was about making a better world, like here and now, through right action and right relationships.
Okay, so then we've got Immanuel Kant.
All right, yeah. So Kant, he approached morality from this totally rational perspective, right? And his categorical imperative.
Which is?
So it's the idea that we should act only according to principles that we could universalize.
Okay.
That emphasizes acting from duty, not just from self-interest.
So it's kind of like asking yourself, what if everybody acted this way?
Exactly. Think about the broader implications of our actions and, the well-being of everyone, not just ourselves.
Okay, and last but not least, we have Schopenhauer.
Yes, the philosopher of compassion.
Right.
He believed that the only way to escape suffering, truly escape suffering, was through recognizing that we're all interconnected and acting with kindness and empathy.
So it sounds like Schopenhauer's emphasis on compassion as, the foundation of ethics really aligns with the teachings of a lot of religions.
It really does. It's amazing how he reached those conclusions, but from a completely philosophical point of view.
So it seems like we're seeing like this convergence here, whether you're looking at religious teachings or philosophical insights.
Yeah.
There's this shared emphasis on inner transformation and ethical living and connecting to something larger than ourselves.
Right.
It's almost like true religion can be expressed in so many different forms, but the underlying principles, they're all remarkably similar.
It's as if, there's this common human longing for meaning and purpose and connection that goes beyond, specific doctrines or beliefs. And that longing in all its forms, that might just be the heart of true religion.
Okay, so we've talked about this idea of true religion resonating across different faiths and philosophies, but how does it play out in the real world?
Right.
How do these profound ideas actually translate to everyday life?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
It's one thing to talk about compassion and ethical living, theoretically, but how do we live that out?
Yeah.
Especially in a world that seems to put self-interest first.
Yeah, it does feel like there's this huge tension between these really, lofty ideals and the realities of modern society.
It's true.
We're always bombarded with messages that say, focus on yourself, accumulate wealth, strive for success no matter what.
Yeah. It's almost like we're experiencing a collective retreat from moral ideals. You know what I mean?
I do, yeah. Like, think about consumerism.
Okay.
We are constantly told that happiness comes from buying more stuff.
Right.
And that can just lead to this never-ending cycle of wanting more and more.
And we're never being satisfied.
Right. And ultimately, that pursuit of material wealth can leave us feeling so empty.
Right, it's like you're chasing this mirage.
Totally. You're always looking for that next thing that will finally make you happy, but it never really does.
And I think that focus on individual gain can often come at the expense of, others.
It absolutely can. We see that in the growing gap between the rich and the poor, where economic systems often favor inequality rather than fairness.
Yeah, it's like we've forgotten that basic principle of, shared humanity.
Right.
The idea that we're all in this together. We're so focused on our own little bubbles that we forget about the interconnectedness of everything.
It's so true. And that disconnect, we can see that in how we treat the environment, too.
Yeah, that's a good point. We often prioritize short-term economic gain, but then that ends up sacrificing the long-term health of the planet.
Right. It's like we're living for right now.
Exactly. It's all about instant gratification.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's, the political landscape.
Don't even get me started.
I know. But it's like, it's so divisive.
Yeah.
It's all about self-interest, and it overshadows any kind of real problem solving or commitment to the common good.
It's true. We've lost sight of the idea that we're all in this together.
It's really a sobering reality.
It is.
But it's so important to acknowledge these challenges if we're actually going to, find a way forward.
Yeah.
Because if true religion, in the broadest sense, it's about living a life of meaning and purpose and ethical action.
Right.
Well, then we've got to confront these societal trends that seem to be pulling us in the opposite direction.
Absolutely.
So then how do we bridge that gap? How do we move from these big ideas to actually doing something?
Yeah.
It feels so overwhelming to think about, changing the world.
It can feel that way, yeah.
When you're just trying to get through your day,
I hear you. But it's important to remember that even small acts of kindness and, ethical decision-making, they can have a ripple effect.
Okay.
We don't have to become, saints or superheroes overnight.
So it's not about waiting for some perfect moment to change the world.
Right.
It's about those everyday choices, those little moments where we can align our actions with our values.
Exactly. I mean, it could be something as simple as choosing fair trade coffee,
Okay.
volunteering at a soup kitchen, or even just having a tough conversation with a friend or family member about a social issue that you care about.
Yeah.
Just, those little things.
Or even practicing mindfulness in our everyday interactions, really listening to people, treating them with respect, even if you disagree with them.
Yes. It's all about cultivating that inner awareness.
Yeah.
That sense of interconnectedness that lets us, move through the world with compassion.
Okay, so it's not just about changing our outward actions. It's about cultivating this inner change as well.
Right. And remember, we're not alone in this. There are so many amazing people and organizations out there working to make the world a better place.
So we can find strength and inspiration in those communities.
Absolutely. We can find it in those shared values that go beyond our differences and bring us together for a common purpose.
That's a good point. And it makes me think of, the concept of Ubuntu.
Yes.
It's not just a feel-good philosophy. It's a call to action.
It is. It's a reminder that our well-being is totally tied to the well-being of everyone else.
Right. And it challenges us to move beyond that individualistic mindset that's so common in our culture.
Exactly. If we really believe that I am because we are, then we have a responsibility to do things that benefit everybody, not just ourselves.
So it's not just about being, a good person on your own.
Right.
It's about recognizing that our actions have consequences. They ripple outward.
Yeah.
We have the power to create real change in the world.
We do.
And it's about understanding that this is a journey.
Right.
It's a lifelong journey of learning and growing and trying to align our lives with those deeper values.
Absolutely.
So really, it's like true religion. It's not a destination.
It's a path.
Yeah, it's a path we walk together, learning and growing and hopefully making the world a better place.
I love that.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to just take a second to reflect on what we've discussed. We've explored how the ideals of true religion can clash with the everyday realities of our modern world. We talked about, this retreat from moral ideals and the challenges we face when so much of the world puts self-interest above everything else.
It's true. But we've also seen how powerful individual actions can be.
Right.
The ripple effect of small choices and how important it is to connect with others who are committed to making the world a better place.
So it's not all doom and gloom.
Definitely not.
it seems like true religion, in its essence, is about, more than just dogma or rituals. It's about how you live your life.
Exactly. It's about embodying compassion and integrity and serving something larger than yourself.
And it's a journey that anyone can take.
It is, no matter your background, beliefs, or circumstances. It's about cultivating those qualities of the heart and mind that allow us to move through the world with kindness, wisdom, and integrity.
So as you go about your day, remember that you have the power to make a difference.
You do.
Even small acts of kindness, compassion, and ethical decision-making, they can have a ripple effect that goes way beyond what you can even imagine.
It's true. So embrace that power.
Yeah.
Cultivate those qualities, and let's work together to create a world that reflects the best of humanity.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time for another exploration of ideas that shape our world.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope this episode provided meaningful insights and sparked reflection. Until next time, take care.
Thank you, listeners. This is the end of our episode. As a personal remark, it is very difficult to obtain spiritual transformation or a change of mindset just by your own and reading books and listening to people. You actually have to connect, and you have to connect with people, and you have to practice being sociable. You have to practice being open-minded. Me personally, I follow Jesus Christ. He has been the most reliable partner in my journey. And so I wish you the best of possible days. Go out there and make the world a better place. Thank you for listening. See you, hear you next time.
Beautifully said. Take care and see you next time.
This concludes our episode. I hope you liked it. If you do, please like it and give me feedback. And I wish you all the best. Until you click again, Michael Appelt, My Conversations with AI, the podcast for you.